2. Bueno, estoy con Steve Brazier, que es el CEO de Canalys a nivel mundial, que nos va a contar un poco acerca de su presentación el día de hoy. Steve, tell us a little bit about the highlights of your presentation today, which was very interesting. The bad points and the good points.
Okay, yes, I wish there were more good points than bad points, but sadly there are some bad points. The server, storage and PC markets and even smartphone markets are all declining in Latin America and indeed around the world as customers go for different solutions. In the smartphone space, the market is saturated, people are holding on to their phones for longer. In the PC space, there's competition with tablets and smartphones. And then this cloud business is taking business away from the server and storage market.
How do you see the cloud business growing in Latin America? Is it real, the growth, or?
Well, globally, the growth is real, especially in the United States and also now in China. So the trend is beyond, we're beyond where we were last year of this is an interesting idea to this is a serious trend, absolutely. And so Latin America is behind, and there's some good reasons why Latin America is behind. And by the way, behind is not always a bad thing. Principally, the big cloud providers pricing in dollars makes you very exposed for your IT costs if currencies change, as they have done this year in Mexico and last year in Brazil. So unless you have local pricing and local cloud providers, it's a very dangerous move. Also, as I talked about in the presentation, it's important to keep your data close to you if you want high performance. And most of the big public cloud providers don't have local data centers in Latin America, so there is latency, and it's useful for low demand applications but not high demand applications.
What about, do you see the growth in private clouds in Latin America due to the reasons that you're telling, or that's not something that we should be happy about?
Yeah, frankly, I don't like the term private cloud. When is a data center a private cloud? So it's a term I don't really like. We've had a trend of virtualization over the last 10 years, led by VMware, of course. And I would argue that anything that is virtualized is a private cloud. In fact, I'm not sure what private cloud really means. But what is a trend is the move towards co-location centers. So we often talk about on-premise computing. That's a silly term. Putting your kit, either owned by yourself or owned by your partner, in a co-location facility but still close to your premises is a very big trend and makes a lot of sense because you get better security, better power supplies, and someone else managing the physical real estate for you.
In all this bad news or bad trend that it's going on, how do you see the role of the channel? How do you see it? What do they have to do in order to survive for this next phase?
I'm very confident the channel will survive. They have done for the last 30 years, and I think will for the next 30 years. But what they have to do is supply small and medium businesses with their technology needs. And of course, the technology needs change over time. And the important thing for the partner is they keep up to date and moving into new technologies. So right now, the best areas to be is particularly security. That is high growth and sure to be continued high growth in the government sector, in the finance sector, in the health sector. There's plenty of opportunities there. There's also going to be opportunities in some of the more futuristic topics around robotics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, voice recognition, human technology integration where you put chips in people's bodies, 3D printing, social robotics, commercial robotics, 5G. There are many new growth areas coming, but you can't stay wedded to the past. You have to move on to where your customers want to go.
You gave us the bad news. What about the good news?
Well, there is some chance of good news. First of all, our market has been very disrupted by companies who are losing a lot of money in their businesses, and they are damaging the true price of where products should be priced, hurting some other vendors. So we would expect, with the victory of Donald Trump, that interest rates will surely go up in the US in December, and that inflation will return to the global economy and the US economy, and interest rates will rise significantly over the next 12 to 18 months. That will put pressure on companies to make profits. that will take away some of the bad competition in the markets that's coming from loss-making companies. Companies like Uber may find themselves in trouble because the source of cheap money could dry up very quickly. That's what we'd expect to happen. In terms of other good news, I say it's about going to the new technologies. We predicted on stage that some channel partners will be selling autonomous or driverless cars within 5 years, which could be very exciting. Those cars need to be maintained, serviced, leased. There'll be apps deployed, debugging of software, carpools, all of these things, the way roads are built, the way transportation happens, everything's going to change. Some partners will get into that. Healthcare is going digital. Be able to do more and more checks at home using digital devices, reporting on your temperature or your sugar level or your blood details, making less visits to hospitals. Hospitals be able to remotely monitor people and only come in for the more important issues. You may get summoned on your smartphone to go and visit a doctor because they've noticed a reading has changed on some of your medical devices. All of these areas are new opportunities for partners to go after, and there are many more.
What would be your biggest advice to a channel in Latin America that it's not as complex in structure as the ones on other geographies in the world? What do they have to do? What is your biggest advice?
Well, their job is to keep up with technology trends of their customers. And analysts don't know what their customers want. The technology vendors think they know, but they don't always know. So it's an easy answer. Many channel partners live off 10 main customers. You have to speak to those customers, understand where their technology challenges are and where they want to go, and go down the journey with them. So innovation in the channel should be driven by customers. If you serve your customers' needs and keep evolving, then you'll have a good future.
Most of your presentation was based on hardware, but a little bit in applications. In where you mentioned SAP, you didn't mention Oracle, you didn't mention many other companies that are into the app world as a service. How do you see these companies growing and being like the leaders in this niche?
Well, the companies you mentioned, SAP and Oracle, are really only relevant to very large businesses.
Okay.
Multinational installations, very large oil companies.
Even though they're trying to sell themselves as companies that are going to SMB?
They have been saying that for the last 2 decades, and it's not really true. But of course, the software industry is becoming software as a service, and there's a lot of activity, mainly from the US, in developing software as a service companies. And it's a very exciting trend for those software companies because they're excited to get customers locked in with annuity revenues. I'm not so sure it's good for your customers in Latin America to be locked in where prices can change, normally going up without any control. So if I was running a business, I would try and avoid all lock-in and keep trying to use, if necessary, open source solutions to protect yourself from that trend.